Let's bring in my next guest, journalist and author Batya Ungar-Sargon. Batya, so great to have you back on the U.S. Report. And I want to talk about this question of Palestine statehood, which has been pushed by France and Canada. The U.S. is obviously holding the line against this idea here, but Steve Witkoff is going to Gaza to check out the humanitarian aid distribution that's happening there. Do you think he's going to be able to, with his reports of how things are actually happening on the ground, change a bit of this international push towards giving Palestine recognition while Hamas is still on the scene?
It's a really good question, James. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you. I honestly, one struggles to imagine the narrative changing only because it is so decidedly against Israel at this point. There's so much anti-Israel sentiment. There does seem to be some hunger derived from failures to distribute the aid. Of course, the lower down the socioeconomic scale you go, the more hunger there is. I don't believe that there is mass starvation, and I'm hoping that Steve Witkoff will be able to bring that home. But also, we do want things to get better in Gaza for the Gazans, and that includes people on the pro-Israel side. Nobody wants to see this prolonged. Obviously, Hamas has decided that it only benefits from the suffering of Palestinians, and the French and the Canadians and the British are just, swallowing that hook, line, and sinker. Honestly, I do think President Trump is helping bring this to a faster conclusion, because he does know how to negotiate with Benjamin Netanyahu. And all we can hope is that this comes to a conclusion soon and the suffering of the Gazans ends and the hostages are all brought home.
Indeed. And let's not forget about those hostages who, of course, this is all about, because this also brings me to my next story, which is about the huge outbreak of anti-Semitism at places like Harvard, which occurred in the outbreak, in the aftermath, rather, of those attacks, those horrific attacks in 2023. Well, Harvard now has been told by the Trump administration that it could face a civil rights lawsuit over the alleged anti-Semitism and harassment at this school. There's been a notice of violation that contains over 50 pages documenting alleged discrimination against Jewish and Israeli students at the institution. Much of it was sourced from the school's own report, and the Trump administration seems to be saying to Harvard, well, too little, too late when you're trying to come to the party on fixing this problem. Where does this leave this once great institution?
I think this is just so great, James. I've talked about this before, but he just keeps hitting them. And, he knows exactly where to hit them to hurt them, which is in the money. These people have a $52 billion endowment, but they're still taking $2 billion of taxpayer money. And it was just so wonderful because apparently the American people didn't realize that they were paying $2 billion a year, to educate the future apparatchiks of the Chinese Communist Party. And so everything that gets revealed in this is great. Harvard taking a beating is great. The president refusing to be, satisfied with the crumbs they're offering is great. The institutions of higher learning in America have been revealed for the anti-Semitic, but more importantly, anti-American cesspools that are. And I just could not love this story more.
No, it is fantastic, Batya, but also there's other stuff going on, too, which I've got to talk to you about, because I love having you on here because you're in New York City, where I'm from here, and where there's a huge story over this socialist mayoral candidate, Zohran Mamdani, who apparently the latest polls say is tipped to win the November general election with 50% of support of likely voters. Tell us more about this guy and about his sort of socialist economics, and who are the people who he is appealing to? Because it seems to me that he's appealing an awful lot to well-off college graduates who are finding New York a very tough place to make a living because there aren't enough elite jobs for them. Tell us about this. It's a real class sort of issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. His base is the sort of disaffected, over-credentialed trust fund socialists who are currently downwardly mobile because they made this bet on higher education. And in the Trumpian economy, Trump is busy lifting up blue collar workers, and a lot of white collar workers, especially at entry levels, are being laid off due to AI. It turns out that the jobs that are irreplaceable is your plumber and your electrician, and the jobs that are replaceable are the sort of entry level journalists, and copywriters and all of this stuff. And this is really who he speaks to. Mamdani himself is a Nepo baby. He's a child of immense privilege. His mother's a filmmaker. His father's a professor. They have a lot of money. He was raised in a compound in Uganda that he was just visiting, which is guarded by people with, automatic rifles. And then he comes back here and calls for defunding the police, and getting rid of guns.
Well, Batya, I'm glad you mentioned defunding the police, because have a listen to this.
And the vision that we've put forward in this campaign, despite what others may say, is not to defund the police. It is, in fact, to allow those officers to respond to these serious crimes that many of them signed up to address.
So now he loves the police, but previously he'd said that he wanted to defund the police. Which Zoran Mamdani do you believe, Batya?
To me, he comes off like one of these social climbing, trust fund socialists. I don't think he believes anything he says. I think that for him, this is just the latest stage in his personal development. And he struck a chord with other trust fund socialists like himself. So I really don't think that he believes much of anything. He seems to me like the type who will say whatever he thinks to get more power. And it seems to be working, although that poll that you shared, I wouldn't take it too seriously. It was put out by somebody who's very much in his camp. What is true, that if the three others run, Curtis Sliwa, Andrew Cuomo, and the incumbent, Mayor Eric Adams, if all three of them run, Mamdani will win. But if only Cuomo runs against Mamdani, he will probably win. And so the other two would have to drop out. But of course, we're dealing with massive egos, so I don't think they will.
So, just to stay on this here question, then what is your prediction for the Democrat Party more broadly? Does Mamdani represent the wave of the future, this sort of disaffected, college-educated, possibly ethnic, hard left woke, but really what it's all about is trying to figure out some way to preserve their class privileges with whether it's rent control or more government jobs? Is this the only way the Democrats now have forward, having alienated pretty much everybody else?
It's a really good question, James. One can imagine a Democratic primary for 2028 in which this is the exact question, right? Do you try to reclaim the center with somebody like Josh Shapiro or Pete Buttigieg, who's willing to say, let's say, the party was wrong on immigration, wrong on trans, let's be normal, let's get back to the center, let's become the pro-Israel party again, let's thank President Trump for what he did on immigration and get back to being strong on immigration like we used to be and standing with labor? Or do you go down the Mamdani AOC route, the route that really hates labor, hates the idea of labor, finds it, humiliating to be asked to work at all, thinks illegal aliens should be doing all of the actual hard jobs so that you can sit around podcasting in your rent-controlled apartment, right? You're anti-Israel, anti-work, anti-America, right? Is that the avenue, the progressive avenue that Democrats should lean into? And this divide will probably define the Democratic primary 2028.
Going to be fascinating to watch, and we'll have you back to talk more about it. Batya Ungar-Sargon, as always, thank you for your time.